welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Jessica from Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am recording today with a children's author who has a very nice sized body of work, but we're going to be focusing on some of her biographies, which are lovely. So first of all, welcome Michelle Meadows to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're very happy to have you. And, it's always interesting speaking to someone who works in children's picture books because it seems to, it's got to be a very different process than even middle grade or, or adult prose. So why don't you tell us first a little bit about yourself and how you sort of ended up in this field writing these books, and then we can kind of chat a little bit about the books themselves.
Sure. So I've always been a writer. And, when I was growing up, I was in poetry clubs and wrote for literary magazines. And I went to Syracuse University and was lucky enough to study both journalism and literature. So I've been a writer all my life. And when my husband and I had a son, that's when I started writing children's books. And I would say for the first, probably my first 7 or so books were heavily inspired by my son. And I have a lot of talking animal books, which I love talking animals. And then when we moved from the DC area to coastal Delaware, then my son went off to college, and I really started thinking about some of the topics that were really important to me. And that's when I started writing biographies. And so the first one was Brave Ballerina, the story of Janet Collins. And I wrote that book while I was taking a ballet class here. And I signed up for a ballet class at a small studio near my home, mostly to try to meet some new friends in a new area, and ended up researching about the history of Black ballet dancers. So that's how I got into biographies.
Wow. Okay. So that is actually very interesting how it led you there. And then another book I'm looking at is Flying High, which is about
Yes.
Simone Biles, and the book, that book, and the book you were just discussing, Brave Ballerina, they're both illustrated by the same artist,
Yes.
Ebony Glenn. And then Jimmy's Rhythm and Blues, which is about James Baldwin, is illustrated by somebody different. It's got, I mean, they're all wonderful. They've got,
Yeah.
what I noticed when I was reading them is that one doesn't seem to rhyme. I mean, they're all poetry, and it's so funny that
Yeah.
you mention, your background in poetry, because it is really
Yeah.
clear when I was reading the books that you're a poet. You have a really good ear for poetry and just for sort of the way that rhymes should work, without
Mhm.
necessarily forcing them, which to me is magic because I
Mhm.
have no idea how that works. But I found it interesting that, these two books, same illustrator, they both rhyme, although they are also quite different. And then the one about James Baldwin, different illustrator, different style of poetry. So
Mhm.
when you came to writing them, how does that work for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is interesting. So with Brave Ballerina, the thing with Brave Ballerina and Flying High is they're both books that have a lot of movement. So with Brave Ballerina, I really wanted it to sound like ballet. So rhyme was very natural for that. And then Ebony Glenn, who's an amazing illustrator, so she did Brave Ballerina. And so we thought it made total sense to rhyme given the movement. Then in 2016, I was watching the Olympics, and that's when I really started paying attention to Simone Biles. And um, and so when I started writing that book, it actually didn't rhyme at first. So I started out not rhyming, but then something happens to me when I do a lot of research. I actually start rhyming. Like it just comes naturally to me that rhymes come. So with Flying High, it ended up switching to a rhyme. So, and one of the reasons is because I had done all this research on Simone Biles' life. And one of the facts that I was really pulled toward was how she loved jumping on trampolines. And so, and she felt like she was flying, right? So one night I was sleeping and I woke up and literally thought to myself, tip top trampoline, jump toward the sky. One little girl wants to fly, fly, fly. And so I grabbed my notebook from my nightstand and I jotted that down. But that was one of the signs that I knew that I wanted that book to rhyme as well. And again, because gymnastics has a lot of movement, I think it fit. It fit. My hope was that Ebony Glenn would agree to take that book on to illustrate it as well. So those two are both with Macmillan, so they're with the same publisher. And I was thrilled when Ebony said she could, in fact, illustrate Flying High as well. Okay, so then fast forward, there is an editor at HarperCollins named Luana K. Horry, who is amazing. And she actually reached out to me through my literary agent. So that one came about differently. Whereas Brave Ballerina and Flying High were things that I generated. Um, Jimmy's Rhythm and Blues. So Luana approached me and said, "Hey, I really like Flying High and Brave Ballerina, and I think you would be a great fit to do a book about James Baldwin." So that's how I ended up doing the biography on James Baldwin. So Luana knew that I love to rhyme and all that, but in this case, with the complexity of James Baldwin's life, I totally understood that I couldn't. I don't think rhyme would have been a good match. And we both agreed on that. So she said, "You can be poetic, but we don't want it to rhyme completely." And I did sneak in one rhyme to Jimmy's Rhythm and Blues because I couldn't help myself, and she let me sneak one in. So I snuck one in the very first page where it says, "Home is brick brown, Harlem uptown, trains rumbling by." Um, so that brick brown and that Harlem uptown, I got that in there. But yeah, so that's how those came to be.
They're all really lovely in their own way. And I think like one thing that I really liked, just in general, we talked about how Brave Ballerina and Flying High are both in rhyme, but they're different, is Brave Ballerina is almost staged like a performance itself. Like just sort of the way that you go through the story. And I thought that that was extremely clever.
And the other thing I was going to tell you about the illustrator for Jimmy's Rhythm and Blues was Jamil Law. So that's one where Luana chose the illustrator. So she chose the illustrator for that book, showed me his artwork, which was great, and then that's how that came to be, and that's with HarperCollins. Yep.
Again, I mean, that was also just a lovely book, and it just completely different. Um, when you are writing, do you ever feel sort of, I mean, going to sound a little strange, but do you ever feel sort of stressed out by getting the right amount of story into a text that could, really work for its audience and also sound right? I mean, again, this is why I said when I started that it's so different talking
Mm,
about middle grade or, YA or adult fiction,
hmm.
because while everybody has their own skill and how they tell a story, this is just completely different.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say stressed out. It's more, for and see, I write fiction too. So I write fiction picture books and nonfiction. So for these biographies, my process is really like diving deep into the research on each of these subjects, right? Diving really deep. And I love to do research. So that part's not stressful. That part is very relaxing because I'm really curious about the person and I'm pretty much obsessed with the person. And I'm a believer in learning everything about the person. So I'm watching and reading and looking at pictures of the person, just everything I can find about the person. So when I'm going through that phase, I'm really happy. I was going to say, I'm really happy. I'm not stressed out or anything. And so I do all of that, and doing all of that first makes the writing come easier for me. So, so then when I get to the writing stage, I think I'm still experiencing more joy. Like it's not painful. You know what I mean? So, and that's one of the things that I love about poetry is because I think for me, it comes a bit naturally. And so certainly I'm, agonizing over things like making sure that things are still factual, making sure that that accuracy is there. But I have to say the research and the writing for these biographies was lovely. Like it was really exciting for me and just really a happy time for me. Not stressful, so that's good.
No, that is good. It's something just that I've always thought about,
Yeah.
especially because I was in children's librarianship for 15 years,
Okay.
that it is, it's got to be just a really, tight skill to have to be able to do that effectively, which you do in all of these stories. So it's really
Thank you. It's
great.
intense. Yeah, it's intense. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 for sure. Um, so I mean, are there any projects that you would like to work on going forward in biography or just in general? Is there something, that kind of itches your brain that you would like to take up that maybe you haven't yet?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, right now I'm at a point where I've been grateful to have published 22 books. And and I know that I really love books that are paired with art. So I really love the visual element of books. And so um, I'm trying my hand at a graphic novel, and we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes. But I can say that it's fun. It's fun to work on. So fingers crossed, like send me good vibes. But I do, it's like I can look back on all of those books that I've done and I can pick out the elements that I like and kind of where I want to go from here. So I feel like I really want to retain the visuals, but I'm open to working in different formats. So we'll see.
Is there any books for yourself that really inspired you to want to write children's books? Like what were some of the things that you really enjoyed writing when you were, excuse me, that you really enjoyed reading when you were young?
Uh-huh. Well, so when I was in elementary school, I loved Charlotte's Web. So I loved it's fun. So even back then, I liked talking animals, and I was really taken with. I wasn't as interested in the human girl. I was much more interested in the relationship between the spider and the pig. So I very much have always been interested in kind of friendship stories, family stories, um, whimsical stories. So, like Charlotte's Web, I definitely read a lot of poetry growing up, Shel Silverstein, um, Langston Hughes, different types of poetry. And then as I got into middle school, I really loved Judy Blume. So I feel like Judy Blume practically raised me. So I really love her style of writing. And uh, let's see what else. And there's just so many books that I love. And certainly some writing craft, books on the craft of writing have helped me quite a bit. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott and Stephen King's on writing, So I've always loved to read ever since I was a little girl, and I just remember I have these great memories of my mom taking me and my brother to the library, and that feeling of being able to pick the books I wanted to read and pull them off the shelf and just like be surrounded by books is such a good feeling. So,
And now people can be surrounded by your books, which is
oh,
super.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy about that. Yes, yes.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. Again, these books are all really cool. And then you have a bunch of other books as well. And I can't wait to see what you have coming up. It sounds like,
Yes, thank
yeah.
you.
So I'm assuming if that's something you would be paired with an artist for that as well, if that's something that
I assume so. I
no?
assume that's how it works. Yeah, like similar to picture book where,
Yeah.
they're acquiring that text and then you get paired with an illustrator. Yeah. So here's to kind of, what's the word, stretching into new directions and
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Well, thanks again. Once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. Our guest was Michelle Meadows, the author of Flying High, Brave Ballerina, and Jimmy's Rhythm and Blues, and a whole bunch of other books, which are also really great. Check them out at your local library. And we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.